All right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that we're in Treaty 1 territory and the home of the traditional lands of the Ojibwe, Cree, Dakota people, and the national homeland of the Red River Community. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation and Treaty 3 territory. My name is Ron Merritt. I'll be your chairperson this morning. Joining the members to my left is Mr. Brent McIntyre, and via Zoom will be Lynn Nesbitt. The assessor this morning will be Jason McCulloch.
Justin.
And our recording secretary will be Justin Kumar.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. We'll be hearing an application of for the revision of the assessment rule according with the Municipal Assessment Act. Matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application and will limit discussions to those matters. The statements that the applicant to the assessor make at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anybody speaking in these matters must be sworn in. Please be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered market value by the board. The board is appointed annually by City Council and is independent of it, along with the city administration. We make our decisions based on the evidence provided at this hearing and issue a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board decision in respect to application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to application from exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included in the board's order. In respect to the hearing this morning, I will confirm the matters to be addressed, which with each applicant. Following the swearing in, we'll then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the other applicant may have, and then will be the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each party will have the opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all evidence about the application is brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket. The session will close after all applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live stream recorded and will be part of the record. I'll ask our secretary to swear in the assessor and then swear in Mr. Smith.
Yes, Mr. Smith. Thank you. Mr. Assessor, please state your full name. Justin McCulloch. Thank you. Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yes. Thank you.
Could you swear me in too as well, please?
Yes, sure. State your full name.
Matthew Stephen Barocas.
Thank you. Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. State your full name.
Trevor Smith.
Thanks. Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. Please sit.
Mr. Barocas, I didn't recognize you with your long hair and the beard. So I apologize for not recognizing you. Anyways, the first item on this morning is going to be 960 Archibald Street. So, Mr. Assessor, whenever you're ready, you can take us through this property.
So we have file number 222846 and roll number 06023710000. The roll year 2023, the assessed value 6,463,000 with a classification of 20 residential 2 and liability is taxable. So we have a residential apartment, one building, 2 stories, Effective year build 1974, 53 suites. Construction is masonry bearing walls. And as you scroll down, you can see the location is located just south of Elizabeth Road on the east side of Archibald. And we'll scroll through. There was a sale in 2013 for 4.7 million. We get to the income value summary. The average monthly rent per unit we have is $1,025 for 53 units. And we could see the income workup from the model. So we come out to a net operating income of $329,619 with a capitalization rate of 5.1% to come up with our total value. Now, with regards to this property, just kind of glancing ahead, our net operating income with the model is coming in at $329,619, whereas the applicants was coming in at $333,153. So from a numbers standpoint, there we are quite similar. So this property is coming down to capitalization rate. If you want to scroll through here, we have provided our numbers for capitalization rates here, and you could see the sales that were provided that had income stabilizations done over 3-year period. So from that standpoint, we feel pretty comfortable here with our value. I don't think I really need to go through a lot of the income statement and that, because our numbers are pretty exact there. So
Okay. The unfortunate part is that we as the board have not looked at the applicant's presentation for the time being. So when you do your presentation, I'd sooner have it that you stick to your presentation and not refer to the other, because we have not seen it. So, but I mean, as we go through these, you can probably say, well, yes, we're fairly close. So the only thing that we're contesting is really the capital rate. I mean, the capitalization rate. So, is that okay?
yeah, no, that's totally fine.
Okay.
So if you want to go to page 5, you could take a look at some of my rental comparables that I provided.
Okay, well, I don't think that's the case. If you guys, if you're very similar, okay, so that's fine. Your presentation is fine. So we'll leave it at such. Is that okay?
Yep.
Okay. Mr. Smith, questions of the assessor?
Yes, just a couple. Just in general, the properties that are on the docket today, have you had given the busy workload of the city, have you had a chance to inspect any of these properties?
No.
Okay. And then looking at the capitalization rate evidence on page number 6. Just have some questions, I guess, regarding a couple of them. 2390 McPhillips, is that a share sale? I wasn't able to find that one.
No, it's in land titles.
Okay, it didn't show up when I was pulling it, but maybe it has now. The 510 Burnell, my information is that was a transaction between related parties, which would exclude it from consideration. Is that correct?
Not to our knowledge.
Okay. Yeah, in looking at it, it appears to be related parties on that particular transaction. Similarly, 959 Grosvenor and 1833 Pembina. This was both a portfolio sale and sale between related parties, which would also exclude it from consideration, would it not? According to the rules and guidelines of the IAAO.
Yeah, so going forward, those two sales will be removed from our capitalization rate evidence.
Okay. Those are all of my questions for the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Nesbitt, questions?
Yeah, I also have a question on the capitalization rate table. So you've selected these particular properties on what basis?
So I can speak to this one. I put the table together. The properties in this table were selected on the basis of the availability of historical income and expense statement information. So there are a whole bunch of other sales where maybe we were missing a mailer or two from the most recent years leading up to the sale date. Therefore, in those instances, I wasn't able to get a really solid idea of what the cap rate would be. Whereas these sales, I was able to get 3-year stabilization on them. A couple of the properties actually came from the Altus cap rate study, and I thought the information there was good as well, so I added them. I might have stabilized a little bit differently, but the sales were good, and so that's why they were added to the end of the list. And yeah, going forward, Pembina and Grosvenor will be removed because the more than one applicant has rightfully brought up the issue of them being sold as a package on that day. So that's not something you're going to see with submissions going forward.
Okay. Did you also select these based on the age being similar to the subject property, or is that just happy circumstances?
Oh, it's not happy well, I guess maybe it is. No, these are just the sales. This is the bolt-on that's going to appear in all of our briefs. So it's not meant to be subject property specific. It's just an example of properties transacted in the market to substantiate the range of models.
Okay, that was my question. Was it tailored to this specific property? And you're telling me no, it's just a subsection or whatever. Okay, so now I'm looking at the table, the cap rate table on page 7, and multifamily. Sorry, I'm just looking at this for the first time. So this is definitely on the lower end, depending on which one you're looking at. Colliers, it's on the lower end. Seems to be like, can you explain it in relation to this table? What is this 5.1 cap rate telling me compared to this table on page 7?
Well, the cap rate we have for the subject, it falls in range with our, like, between the 20th and 80th percentile.
Kind of right in the middle?
Yeah.
Ish.
Yeah.
Looking at Colliers and CBRE, it's on the low end.
Yeah, and I would say with the city of Winnipeg, we get all the data with, like, through the mailers, so that we're able to bring in a more accurate range of the capitalization rates through all the sales that come through.
Okay, and is there, can you give me, like, is there a cap rate breakdown for apartments by, either by year or, in the city of Winnipeg's analysis this year, like older apartments are of this age tend to be a cap rate around this versus, you know what I'm saying? Previous,
Definitely. I know in the past we've been able to, there were age groups and it was done by size, but we found this year that the modeler has gone away with that because you end up with steep cliffs where you've got a property that was built in 73 next to a property that's built in 74. It could be virtually identical, but then the cap rate is different. So there's no like discrete variable groups anymore. It's done by a formula on a basis meant to more smooth out those cliffs and not have them anymore. So unfortunately, we're not able to provide that this year.
okay, that's interesting to note. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. McIntyre.
I see there is an effective age on this property. Has it been renovated?
Yeah, I can just check to see if there has been renovations, although judging by the photographs, there has been some, you could see that there has been some upgrades if you scroll to page 15, page 14 and 15 of our brief.
So Chair, if I may just interject, and this is not specific to this hearing, but I do have a bit of an issue with the situation where the assessors are presenting remotely from their office and have full access to all their data sources, etc., to bring in information that isn't necessarily present in the presentation as far as the material that was submitted. I can understand how in some cases it might be useful, but it certainly isn't an equal situation for both parties. So I just wanted to point that out.
We'll take that into consideration.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, well, and I mean, we could look at if you go to page 14 and onwards, I mean, you could make a judgment and say that there probably has been some upgrades to the building that look fairly recent, so.
Well, my question was, when was it renovated?
That I don't have that information.
So you don't know if it was renovated before the sale or after the sale?
No.
Okay, that's my question.
Thank you. I just have an observation. I'm looking at the capitalization rate evidence, and there are several extractions of cap rates, and some have been eliminated. My point of view is that I guess I'm looking at these extractions of cap rates as published. For the subject property, you're using 5.1, which is model driven. So why would you include, and I think you said that you don't really use this capitalization rate evidence because everything is model driven. So why would you put a capitalization rate evidence in the presentation if you're not using it?
Well, we are using it.
Well, I look at the evidence then, and you tell me how you can conclude a cap rate of 5.1.
Well, first of all, let's back this up here. The capitalization rate is determined by the model based on its characteristics in our system.
Yeah, but I'm talking about when you do a capitalization rate and you present it as evidence, shouldn't you talk about this or conclude a capitalization rate for the evidence that is presented?
Okay, the table on page 6 aren't subject specific. I don't know if you know how much available cap rate data is out there.
Oh, there's.
But but hang on, let me finish. There's not
Yeah,
a whole
sorry.
heck of a lot where you have mailers that behave in a consistent manner without renovations or odd expenses or missing expenses where you can actually determine a cap rate, which you can reasonably conclude a purchaser would use to come up on the purchase price. So when you see the cap rate table here, these are the sales that I was able to find, and including some that applicants found, which I found applicable, meant to give the panel an idea of the range of sales that are actually being transacted, the rates that are out there against what our model's cranking out, because we're just showing how the actual sales mirror what the range of the model is. So if you're looking at the range now, I know we've heard in the past that, oh, there's a lot of low sales in here, a lot of below 5% sales. So that's why when you see Corden, Maryland, Arden, those other sales in there, they're above 5%. So if you're removing Pembina and Grosvenor, you end up with 3 properties below 5%, 3 properties above 5%, 1 property below 4%, which I think is a pretty good strata in relation to what the model's cranking out. So it's not meant to.
We can argue this is probably half a day. So let's just nip it in the bud. It was just an observation. Just wanted to highlight that part of it.
Fair enough.
I have no other questions. Mr. Smith, your presentation.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So 960 Archibald, just to clear up one point to start, property was purchased in 2013 and subsequently renovated. As you can see from the photos in my brief, from page 4 onwards, you can get a level of an impression of the level of the improvements. They're nice but functional. This is what I would call the improvements, and they're not absolutely brand new, but certainly on the recent side. So in terms of the condition of the units, they are in good shape and have been somewhat recently renovated. So there is no potential for this particular property for a purchaser to come in, buy a property that is somewhat dated, improve the units, and increase their return by increasing the rents. This property is as is, and the in-place income and expenses would be what any purchaser would see going forward. So let's have a quick look at it. Cover page, you can see a picture of the exterior. As you can see, it's a 2.5-story walk-up, so roughly a third of your units are what we would call below grade. Obviously, they have windows, but they are on that street level and below level. Let's move on to my page number 3, just for a bit of background. We have property assessed in 2023 for $6,463,000. I do not have the 2020 assessment, but you can see the prior assessments before that time frame. 2018 being at $5,164,000. Property was originally built in 63, obviously with recent renovations, as you can see. And we have a total of 53 units, 24 1-bedrooms, 24 2-bedrooms, and 5 bachelor units. You can get a bit of a description at the bottom of page number 3 of the units themselves. Let's move forward to Site description and location, you can see that on page 4, or rather page 8 and page 9. It does front on Archibald, and you can see the general location on page number 9, across from the cemetery on Archibald there. Parking located at the rear of the property. Let's move into the analysis itself. As the assessor has stated, we do end up very close in terms of net operating income, so I'm not going to run through this in great detail, but I will point out a few differences. We have an overall average rental rate for the property of $918 per unit per month. You can see the Cmhc stats at the bottom of the page for bachelor through 2 beds. And this generally falls in line with that. We also provide stats on page number 12 for average rents for that area, which would be St. Boniface, as well as Winnipeg as a whole. Additional rental backup shown at the bottom of page 12. Generally, these are all in that St. Boniface area, 1 and 2 bedroom units. So we believe the in-place rents are at market, as supported by the evidence we provided, and this gives us our gross rental income of $583,875 just from rental itself, before parking and laundry, which we then include on top of that. The top line rental income, $583,875 based on the in-place rents, is roughly 50, 60, going on $70,000 lower before parking and laundry than the projection of the city. Once you add laundry and parking in, it comes out to roughly $33,000 lower than the city's income projection. Where we differ somewhat, again, is on the expense side. We move forward to the bottom of my page number 14. We have 1 year history for this property that was available. And you can see each of the expenses shown in the chart at the bottom of page number 14. They come out to a total of $266,954. I will point out that the management fees there of $25,708 are somewhat lower than what the industry norm of 5% of effective gross income would be. That would come out to $30,005. So we're sitting at about $4,000 plus lower on the management fee side. So let's move forward to capitalization rate. Obviously, that's a critical point for this particular property. So what we have done is provide a chart of recent cap rates, apartment cap rate transactions in the city of Winnipeg as close to the valuation date as possible. Obviously, there's a range of both size and age and location in here. What this chart is showing overall is kind of the spectrum of or rather the range of transactions in the marketplace, not from the absolute lowest to the absolute highest, but kind of the normal range that properties that are purchased for their actual in-place income.
Mr. Smith, what page are you on?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, we're on page number 15. I know it's different when you're on your screen and not flipping.
Yeah.
My apologies. I'll do better.
That's no problem. That is,
Not a problem. I'll wait for everybody to get there.
Yeah.
So as you can see, there's a range of ages, range of sizes, but our sale dates are all 2018 through 2020. And the cap rate ranges from a low 5.2% up to a high of 6.7% on the outside, a bit of an outlier. And for the most part, we're looking at between 5.2 and 5.7% as kind of the norm for transactions in this period of time. Now, these were all purchased for their actual in-place return. There was no renovations done to these properties or planned renovations to our knowledge. So this is a good representation of what astute investors are willing to apply as far as the cap rate as of the valuation date. Now, let's move beyond that and look at the market itself. What we've done is give you some background from two of the major commercial real estate brokerages, both in Winnipeg and nationally, as well as internationally, Colliers and C.B. Richard Ellis. So we've kind of given you a time horizon from 2016 through 2020. And I'll start with Colliers on page number 16. You can see that cap rates remained very stable generally in their survey between 2016, 2018, 2020, with high-rise apartments varying between 5 to 5.75% in 2016, and 5 to 6% in 2018 and 20. Low rise between 5.25% and 6% in 2016, and 5% to 6% in 2018 and 2020. Similarly, on page number 17, we have the stats from C.B. Richard Ellis, page 17 and 18. And you can see that they generally remain very stable as well, and they're projecting low-rise apartment property cap rates between 5.25% to 6% for low-rise A properties, and 5.5% to 6% for low-rise B properties. Now, the subject property, as noted, has already been renovated. There is no potential for buying the property, renovating and increasing the rent, as well as the return, in order to increase the return to the purchaser. In those situations, sometimes purchasers are willing to pay more in order to acquire the property, as they are subsequently then changing the financial structure of the property and increasing their return. None of the ones that we presented are in that situation. So they are true cap rates. Subject property, it is located in St. Boniface on Archibald. It's kind of in a string of apartment buildings, all in that 1960s, 70s kind of age range. It's fairly big thoroughfare that runs through there. Not a neighborhood that has a lot of walkability, as in not a lot of retail that directly services it. You generally have to drive from there to services such as that. There would be obviously bus service on Archibald. Property is built in 63, again, 2.5-story walk-up, many of these in the city, but I would, of course, point out that you're looking at a third of your units being below grade here. Relatively standard block, I would say. Overall, you've got a good balance of units, 24 1-beds, 24 2-beds. So it would generally fall within the cap rate ranges we have shown, as well as those shown by the brokers themselves. Based on this discussion, we would see it kind of falling in that midpoint of the cap rate range, which would be 5.5% in the case of the subject property. So if you flip to page number 20, this is summarized. We have our valuation adjacent to City of Winnipeg's valuation. You can see the differences in the top line rental income, effective gross income. Our expenses based on the actuals are somewhat lower than the city's projection. We come out to a similar NOI. Again, cap rate of 5.5%. I don't see the subject property drawing a cap rate towards the low end of the standard range for the reasons stated. So our final market value is $6,057,000. The addenda includes the income and expense mailer, and that is my presentation. I'm open for questions.
I thank you. Gentlemen, Mr. Assessors, questions of Mr. Smith?
Just regarding the cap rates on page 15. How did you calculate the cap rates?
How did we calculate them?
Yeah. Like, was there a 3-year income stabilization involved?
It would depend on the information availability for the property. So we obviously ran through a standard valuation model where we consider all the aspects of the in-place income and expenses, make any adjustments that would be required for any kind of outliers, and you end up with the resultant capitalization rate based on standard methodology.
And these 2 properties here on Kildare, was that a paired sale, or like was it sold like the same property sold twice?
No, to my knowledge, it's not. It is not the same property.
And so were they purchased by the same person?
I'm afraid I haven't presented that information in the chart here. I don't recall off the top of my head.
Okay. All right. That's everything.
Mrs. Barocas?
That's it. No, that's it.
Okay. Ms. Nesbitt?
No, I have no questions.
Mr. McIntyre?
Oh, I have no questions. Thank you.
I just have a couple of questions for Mr. Smith. Just to follow up in regards to the assessor. The information according to page 15, where did you extract your information from for your cap study?
Well, we would have got it either through, in some cases, participation in the property sale, as in brokers that we would have been working with would have participated in them in some cases. In other cases, it would be information that came to us by way of completing standard appraisal assignments, and in other cases it's doing standard market research where we contact vendors and purchasers and or their agents or mortgage brokers or down the line.
So in support of your cap rate of 5.5%, everything looks like it's except in line, except for sale number 3, which has got a cap rate of 6.7. So
yes,
what went on there?
That particular one, it is on the smaller side.
Well, so are some other ones.
Yeah, there are others that are on the small side as well. And I'm trying to remember the exact detail for that one. I believe condition was an issue for that, but there was no there was no intent to renovate on purchase. That was my understanding.
I thank you. Either party want summation?
No, we are good. Thank
Thank
you.
you, Mr. Smith.
I'm fine, thank you.
Like you say, the whole case revolves around NOIs are close to the same, which is cap rate. All right, so we'll go on to 990 Archibald. So Michael, whenever you're ready, you can take us through the property. I understand there's a recommendation on it, so maybe you can just highlight those items for us.
Okay. So this is file number 22-2823 and roll number 060222 and we did come up with a recommendation to reduce the 2023 assessment to 683,000. Based on the subject's reported NOI and a 4.8% capitalization rate.
What was the rate again? I'm sorry.
4.8% capitalization rate.
And Mr. Smith, are you in agreement with it?
We are in agreement with the value presented, yes, not necessarily each of the individual components.
You're in agreement.
Yeah.
Okay. Ms. Nesbitt, any questions?
No questions.
Mr. McIntyre?
I just had one. Is there a reason why there's no photo of the subject property?
No, I did the workup and we just didn't include it. We felt like it was just a reasonable recommendation based on the income and expenses.
Because sometimes a picture is worth 1,000 words.
Fair.
Alrighty, that was my only question.
All right. We'll go on to 994 Archibald. Beckler?
Yep.
Are you ready?
Yeah. So we have file number 22-2824 and roll number 0602220700. And the roll year 2023, the assessed value of the property 924,000. Classification is 20 and liability is taxable. So again, it's an apartment, 1 story, 1 building, has a 1966 effective age, 11 suites, 11 outdoor parking, and the construction is wood or steel framed exterior walls. So again, I had put a map here for where the subject's located, and just south of Elizabeth Road on the east side of Archibald. Scrolling now to page 4, we have our income value summary where we have 11 total units, 10 1-bedroom, 1 3-bedroom, our average monthly rent of $751.53. And then you could see again our model workup here with a total net operating income of $46,218 and a capitalization rate of 5%.
Right, thank you.
So next page, I just provided some rent comparables just to show here of similar properties within close proximity to the subject. And you could see that the rents are falling in line between the range of $739 to $840 per month. And if we look forward, our capitalization rate table, we went over that previously. Just it has our ranges here for multifamily between 4.8 and 5.6% between the 20th and 80th percentile. And then following again our cap rate evidence that was spoken to previously with with the same properties. And scrolling to page 9, I had just provided here income and expense workup that the owners had submitted. So you could see based on their net operating income for 2020 was reported at 55,314, and then for 2019 was reported at 57,367. Now they didn't have any management fee allocated, so I did add in a management fee for both those years, which would bring in the adjusted NOI to 50,706 for 2020 and 52,800 for 2019, with our model value at 46,218. So we felt pretty comfortable where we were at with this property.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, questions of the assessor?
Yes, just a few. So looking at page number 4 and the gross potential rent projection, $99,202. When I flip forward to the mailer on your page number 9 for the relevant year 2020, we have the gross potential rent at $87,531 plus some parking, but $87,531 effective gross income, you're at 96,028. If you add the parking to the residential gross, it comes to 92,151 on the mailer. Would this not point to the model being slightly off in the case of the subject property with that big a gulf?
I would say that the net operating income still comes out in line to what's reported in the actual mailers. I would say that, yeah, if you want to look at just the gross potential rent, but the bottom line with the net operating income, it does fall in line to roughly what they're reporting.
Okay, so let's move forward to that then. On page number 10, you've indicated your calculation of the NOI, I guess, based on their income expense mailers. So let's look at that. So 2019, you add in a management fee in order to account for that, and you arrive at an NOI of 52,800. So when I flip to the 2019 mailer, which is page number 10,
right,
and I look at the expenses, so we have snow removal of $50. That's essentially a couple of shovelings by my son of my driveway. That wouldn't account for a standard snow removal for a parking lot at an apartment. There's no security costs. We have no maintenance supplies. The biggest one, there's no caretaker expense whatsoever. In your experience, is it standard practice that an apartment wouldn't have any caretaking expenses?
it could be rolled into the repair maintenance, but you could say that, yeah, usually there would be a caretaker, although it'd be difficult to just project a number.
So, but not to have any accounting of it, equally would lead to an exaggeration in the other direction. Moving on, 2020, similarly, if we look at the 2020 I&E, there is, again, you made a projection for property management, that's fine. No professional fees, no office supplies, no security, no maintenance supplies, and no caretaking. Again, this would lead to an underestimation of the actual expenses for a standard operation of an apartment, would it not? And an overestimation of the net operating income?
It could, but I will circle back to the fact that our model is still coming in at 46,218. So, I mean, I would think even if maybe some of those have been added in, that our model still comes in pretty close.
All right, those are all of my questions for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Nesbitt, questions?
Yeah. This is just for the record because in theory, this is a brand new matter from the first one we heard, but could you please review for our record the cap rate evidence that you presented on page 7?
Okay, so we had just comprised sales that had happened during the reference period and did 3-year income stabilizations on them to come up with our cap rates. And then, like I had said, there is 2 of them there that won't be included going forward with 1833 Pembina and 859 Grosvenor. And these were to just show that these sales give a synopsis of where our ranges of cap rates fall. When you look at page 6, how we're the 20th to 80th percentile, 4.8 to 5.6%, how these sales can back that up. And they were done with 3-year stabilizations.
Thank you, Mr. Michalek. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Okay, I thank you. Brent?
I have no questions, just a comment again, no picture.
Yeah, fair.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, I have no questions. Mr. Smith, we're ready for your presentation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So 994 Archibald Street. On the cover page, you can see a street front photo showing you the front exterior, story and a half, property built in 1966 with a total of 11 units, 10 of them being 1-bedroom and 1 3-bedroom unit in the subject property, located in very close proximity to both of the last properties, 960 and 990 Archibald. You can see a couple more photos on pages 4 and 5. The property is in average condition, certainly for its age. Has had some updates, but not a full renovation to my knowledge. But again, it is in good condition. You can see from the flooring on page number 5. Location shown on page 7. Parking at the rear of the structure shown on page number 6. Let's move into the analysis itself. Just taking a quick look. We do have some differences from the city. Obviously, rental income is significantly lower, and gross potential, once we include parking revenue, is also still significantly lower. We'll get to that. The rental analysis begins on page number 9. We have an overall rental average of $663 for the property. Again, the vast majority of the units, 10 out of 11 being one-bedroom units. And a good portion of those being below grade. You can see the CMHC averages on page 9, as well as the Winnipeg averages. Moving beyond that to our market study itself, page 10, you can see the rental rates in St. Boniface of a few properties for one-bedroom units. The rents are certainly at the bottom end of the range, but they are the legal rents that are in place. There isn't really a lot of upside with this property. It is in good condition, and again, 50% of the units in the property are of that below grade nature. When you look at the layout of the units themselves, which of course would lead generally to lower rental rates on that particular level. So we believe that the in-place rental rates are reflective of the property. You can see the gross potential rent at $87,531. We've added in the parking revenue from 2020, and they do not have any on-site laundry facilities to add revenue to the property. Let's move on to vacancy. We are in agreement with the 3.2% projection. Again, this is a very minimal level of vacancy overall. It does match the vacancy rates generally as projected or as studied by CMHC. If you look at St. Boniface, one-bedroom vacancy in 2020, it sits at 3.1%. So we think that that's certainly a fair value. Let's move on to the expense allowance. We've run through a 3-year stabilization. As we've already referred to, a number of the categories were not completed in the income and expense. It's not that these expenses don't exist. It's simply that they weren't included in the income and expense. Relatively small investor, not as sophisticated, not operated by a large property management firm, etc. So they don't account for any property management fees, professional fees, very minimal accounting of office supplies and or marketing, or security, or caretaking or maintenance supplies. So this is an issue. You don't run a block without incurring these expenses in general. So where needed, we've made estimates, which I'll get through. So we can go through this line by line. I'm sure you don't want to. 3-year averages were done where appropriate. In many cases, these lead to very low amounts, obviously on office supplies, marketing, things such as that. The estimates have been done for professional fees. We've estimated an amount of $500 based on our industry knowledge. Obviously, at year end, you need to do an accounting of the property for income tax purposes, etc. At a very minimum, this is going to cost you $500. That would be a bare bones estimate, no other professional fees assigned. The security, again, typically there is some level of security for these blocks. We've included an estimate of $500 based on our industry knowledge. Caretaking, there is no possibility that there's no caretaking done in the block. Looking at a significant number of blocks of a similar size, we've estimated on the very low end an expense of $4,000. Typically, that could certainly be higher, but I didn't want to be on the aggressive side in our valuation here. And the rest of them are there as standard. So we come out to a stabilized expense of 48,817, which is 54+% of the effective gross income. Now, again, we're being very conservative on the expenses projected there. Our capitalization rate study remains the same, as do the statistics from the major market brokers, all pointing to that range of 5% at the absolute low end for low-rise A properties, up to 6% at the high end for low-rise properties. The majority of transactions falling in between that, 5.2 to 5.8% type of range. The subject property is in good condition. It has one kind of outlier unit, being a 3-bedroom, but 10 out of the units are 1 bed, so relatively easily leasable. Unfortunately, half of those are below grade, of course, which are less in demand. They still lease, obviously, but they do tend to draw lower rental rates. Property as a whole is of a smaller size at 11 units, and is in relatively good physical condition. When we take into account all the factors, quality, demand, location, risk, etc., we feel that an appropriate capitalization rate would be somewhat lower at 5.25% for the subject property, based on this commentary. So page number 18 will summarize this. You can see our gap in rental income, the actual versus projected by the city, as well as effective gross once we include parking. The expenses are projected expenses are very close in dollar figure to that projected by the city. And we cap our NOI at 5.25%, giving us a final market value of $769,000. And the addenda merely includes the income and expense for the property. I'm open for questions.
I thank you. Assessors, questions of Mr. Smith?
Yeah. Just regarding this property, do you know what the actual reported vacancy is for the specific property?
At the point in time, I'm sure it probably shows us in the income and expense there, depending on what they've included. So let's have a look at that. So point in time, it is indicating 0% vacancy. Now, of course, our task here is to arrive at fair market value and not base everything on a single year. So typically a property will experience vacancy, doesn't necessarily have it in 1 year, but will have some higher in other years. It varies, so one does have to account for a standard vacancy allowance. 3.2% is certainly on the low side as far as vacancy, and it does mirror the Cmhc statistics. So we have agreed with that particular parameter.
And do you know if there's a waiting list for the property?
In Winnipeg, there's waiting lists for the vast majority of apartments. Whether people actually follow through or not is a very different story. Ghosting has become a very common occurrence where people set up appointments to come and view properties, and they will either show up and then never call back, or just not show up at all. So the waiting list is a bit of a red herring.
And just regarding the expenses, with the caretaker, given the fact that this is a property that's in good condition, smaller, only 11 units, do you think that it was probable that the caretaker could be rolled into the repair and maintenance?
No, I don't.
And the $4,000 estimate you had just like, does that just come from a market study or?
It's based on my industry knowledge and discussion with property managers of multifamily properties, of properties of this size, what their caretaking expenses typically amount to. And again, $4,000 is on the low side.
Okay, that's everything.
All right, thank you. Ms. Nesbitt?
Yeah, I have a question about the rents. The rent table on page 10. So the model rent that you're using, Mr. Smith, I think is $663 per suite. Is that an actual rent or is that a model?
No, that's the actuals as an average. I'm afraid I didn't have a breakout of each individual unit, but the average comes out to 663.
And are you using the evidence on page 10 to support that rent? I am, yes. Now I realize that a good number of these are somewhat higher than the 663. Again, I would point to location being a factor, as well as the structure itself. So again, we have 50% of the units being in the basement, most essentially 1 story and a half property. Typically, we're looking at 3-story or 2.5-story walk-ups. So you'd have many more units that would be above grade that would draw greater levels of rent than those below grade. Yeah, I'm just actually questioning the applicability of these rents that you chose. I know that it's from St. Boniface as a broad area, but
yes.
Is there a different market between Enfield and Archibald?
Well, if we look at, and this gets into perhaps more subjectivity, but Archibald is a bit of a thoroughfare. So I would almost call it somewhat more transient in terms of a location one might want to remain at long term. It has good access to many places, but again, amenities in the area are somewhat minimal. You have to drive everywhere. You look at Eugenie, Enfield, etc. You're in the heart, Lindale, Thibault. You're in the heart of St. Boniface. You can walk to most amenities, restaurants, grocery shopping, banks, etc. So yes, I would agree that they would probably be somewhat higher. Unfortunately, I didn't have great rental comparables from Archibald to supply.
Okay. All right. Well, that was my question about the rents. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McIntyre?
I have no questions, thank you.
I just have a follow-up in regards to Ms. Nesbitt's. It seems like the discrepancy just on rents is about $90 per unit, which reflects in the NOI, and the difference in NOI is about $6,000. But the cap rate that you're using, Mr. Smith, is 5.25. And in the first case that we had, which is 960 Archibald, the bigger, units in total, suite-wise, or the number of units, but the same vintage in regards to year, and you're using 5.5. So why does this one come in at the 5.25?
Right. Good question. So when we look at this one, main factor, they're in very similar locations. They're similar in age. All this one hasn't had as much updating as the other property. But the main factor would be size. So we're looking at 11 suites here, 10 of them being one bed, so very leasable, 1 3-bedroom, which is a bit of an outlier. When you have a property that's on the smaller scale, smaller size of the scale, such as this one, there do tend to be more potential investors out there, which can drive demand. You have more people available to purchase a smaller property than to purchase a larger one. So that can tend to drive a bit of competition and somewhat lower cap rates.
So the interest, I mean, the rent per suite, you think 663 is about right for a 1-bedroom? Well, you know, in the cities that, you know, $90 more per suite. So
yes, and I understand the point. It's certainly on the low end of the scale. I don't deny that. They are the actual in-place rents, or that is the actual average in-place rent for the property. I can certainly show you other rents of that level, not necessarily in St. Boniface, but I didn't feel they'd be appropriate to put.
have you been through this building?
Unfortunately, I was not able to do a walkthrough given the time frame that we had.
And you don't know how big the suites are, or
I do not have.
like some of them are classified as 1-bedroom, but they could be like some bachelors too. You know, or,
Yeah, I don't believe that they're necessarily bachelors, but I'm afraid I don't have a size for you. Sometimes the city has that on their information, but actually we do here too. So we're looking at an average per unit of 779 square feet. So a bit on the smaller side, and that takes into account the whole area of the building, including common areas.
all right. I thank you. Either party wants summation?
No, we are good.
Mr. Smith, I'm fine, thank you. We're going to take about a 5-minute break. So we'll have Zezwanar? Yeah. Okay. All right, we're calling meeting for the hearing back to order, and the next property we will go to is 1295 Dakota Street. So Mr. Mikulik, whenever you're ready.
Okay, this is file number 22-2222 and roll number 08008073400. And the roll year is going to be 2023. The assessed value is $9,484,000. The classification is 40, as this is an institutional property and it is school tax exempt. So it is a 1 building with 3 stories. Year built, effective year built is the same at 1989. We have 95 suites, 71 outdoor parking, and the construction is wood, steel framed exterior walls. So I just put a picture here of the location. So it's located on the east side of Dakota Street, just north of South Glen Boulevard, and you could see somewhat adjacent by the Dakota Community Center. So just moving forward to page 4, you could see our income value summary breakdown. So 32 1-bedroom, 64 2-bedroom, with our average monthly rent per unit being $906.63. And we have our model workup here, where we work out to a net operating income of 478,918 and a capitalization rate of 5.05%. And page 5, I had supplied some rental comparables. So you could see with some of the similar properties within close proximity, where the rents we have fall below other properties in the area. And just to further that, because this is a elderly person's home, we're using, like, we want to compare CMHC rents for Zone 10 St. Vital. If you look at Zone 10, the 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom rent lines, we are well under the 1317 and 1043 for CMHC. So moving forward here, same thing with the capitalization rates, just where the city falls on the spectrum of the 20th to 80th percentile, and then the similar cap rate evidence to support that range with the sales provided. And then, so scrolling forward to page 10, just providing the 2020 mailer here. I had made a mistake in my calculation. So the subject NOI for 2020 and 2019 shouldn't be that. I was reading the expense line when I was devising my calculations, but it would be the line item of just below it of 480,198 would be their reported income for 2020, and then 466 for 2019. And then that's everything I have there now. Glancing ahead, we are quite similar to the applicant in our net operating income. Our model's 478,918 compared to theirs at 467,691. So we do feel pretty comfortable where we're at again on this property. So that would be everything. And yes, I realize there's no pictures for.
Thank you, Mr. McCullough. Mr. Smith, questions of the assessment.
Yes, thank you. I won't ask you about the pictures.
My job.
I do have a couple of questions. So the statement that you've provided here is from March 31, 2020. But the valuation date is April 1, 2021. So there's another whole year end that would have been supplied to the city of Winnipeg. Just wondering why that is not included and used in this valuation, because it would be the proper year.
Yeah, no, fair. That would be my error in the sense that I didn't, at the time putting these together, I didn't realize their year end was, I would have been able to use a 2021 mailer. So that's a totally fair point. So yeah, I would just say that that's my fault on that.
Fair enough. And you've corrected your stated NOIs on page number 10.
Yeah.
Incorrect as well.
Yeah, no, that was reading that was again my total error when I was putting that together.
Yeah, no problem.
I realized afterwards.
No worries. And that so that's just reading the line items. That's not reviewing the audited statement expenses that would have been provided, I guess. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, because that's just a single, and I know we can't include everything in these briefs, but this is just the one page from what would have been sent in, I'm guessing.
Yes,
Okay, just quickly, so this property valuation is model driven, of course.
that's right.
And does that model, so the model values it as a standard market apartment, I'm assuming, correct?
Yes, now we had set the property to poor income quality to reflect the fact
Basic nature.
of the nature of what type of property that it is already.
That's certainly fair. It does, the model doesn't take into account legal ownership structure of property, I'm assuming. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay, those are all my questions. Thank you.
I thank you. Ms. Nesbitt,
I have no questions.
Mr. McIntyre.
And I have no question. Thank you.
I have no questions either. So, Mr. Smith, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you very much. So we're looking at 1295 Dakota Street. It's a property known as Kirchhoff Gardens. It is a nonprofit, a seniors life lease facility, operated on a nonprofit basis and owned on a nonprofit basis. The page number 3 of my brief gives you some background on the property. Obviously, 2023 assessment is $9,484,000. You can see beneath that the history of the prior assessments. 2020 was reduced to $8,179,000. As well as the previous years underneath of that. We have, again, seniors nonprofit life lease facility, total of 96 units, 64 of them being 2 bedrooms and 32 of them being 1 bedroom units. We'll take a quick look at the photos. You can see the exteriors on page number 4, some interiors of some of the common areas on page 5, always front entrance. There's also some other common areas for seniors to gather, library, things of that nature. And we have photos of the interior of the units, which are very reflective of its date of origin, that being 1989. So there's been no renovations. You can see that kind of Euro style cabinetry in the kitchen, linoleum flooring, full carpeting of that time frame, as well as the standard kind of bathroom build out from that time frame. There's another common area at the bottom of page number 8. So additional area that a standard block would not have to maintain heat, clean, etc. Let's move on to my page number 8, page number 9 rather. A bit of a description of the improvements which we've already viewed. You can see the site description at the bottom of page number 9. Parking is grade level exterior. And the property is located in South St. Patel on Dakota Street. Let's move on to page 11. Typically, we're looking at a standard market apartment. In this case, what we have is fee simple estate ownership for the subject property. So the subject property is owned by a nonprofit group that developed the property to provide low-income seniors with adequate housing in this area. So that is their mandate and their purpose on a life lease basis. So let's have a quick look at page number 11. Fee simple estate ownership is, according to the Appraisal Institute of Canada, greatest estate that an owner and Crown can other than the Crown can have the land held in perpetuity, carrying with it the right to sell, lease, or give it away, subject only to restrictions held by the Crown, i.e. taxation, expropriation, police power, etc. That's cheating. Following that, and applicable to the subject property, a leasehold estate is defined by the Appraisal Institute of Canada as an interest in land for a definite period of time, a week, a year, 100 years, or even more. Lessor or landlord grants the leasehold estate to a lessee or tenant, usually for sum of money. Lessee has the right to exclusive possession of the property for the term of the lease. So in this case, it is a life lease property. So the nonprofit organization is on title and owns the property as a whole. However, each of the units is a leasehold estate or leasehold interest for the actual resident. So they have the right to occupy that particular unit until the end of their life, or until they need to move on to different levels of care, etc., if they choose to do that. They do not have the right to sell their interest on the market. So there is no upside for residents and or the nonprofit, in that the unit simply goes back to the nonprofit entity that owns the property, and the deposit is returned to the lessee upon their exit, and then it's let out again. So that is the structure. What this creates in the marketplace, if you want to compare this to a standard market apartment, is a situation where if you were to look at a purchase of this property, you have, how many units do we have? 64, 96. You have 96 different people that have the right to occupy their individual unit until the end of their life, indefinite period of time. They determine what happens within their unit, as in whether it would be renovated or not. They don't have to allow renovations, etc. And in this case, the vast majority of them are original to that 1989 date. So there is there's essentially no opportunity for an investor to come in, buy the property, renovate the units, and increase the rent, etc. It simply can't happen. These tenants have jurisdiction over the unit for the period of their life, or until they move out, obviously. So in that situation, again, there's not a lot of upside on the rent side, and you have an indefinite period of time for 96 different people occupying their units. So you're not, you couldn't slowly acquire all of them in any kind of quick manner that would make economic sense as far as an investment goes. So there would be an extraordinary amount of care on a deal such as this if you were to look at a purchase on an investment basis compared to a standard market apartment. Let's move on to the valuation. The actual in place overall rental charge for March 31st, 2021 year end financials came out to $987,000 or $987,441. This was a range of $779 to $811 for one bedroom units and $911 to $994 for two bedroom units on average. Now, that if you project that as each of the units being fully occupied for 100% of the time, your full occupancy gross rental income would be $1,008,960. They actually achieved $987,441. So while we're basing it on the full occupancy, the actual what was achieved was somewhat lower than that by over roughly $20,000. Rent roll is shown at the bottom there as to how we arrived at the gross potential income. Now, the rents that are in place are the at market. Again, we're looking at rather basic units and looking at again a mandate of supplying low-income seniors with affordable housing. So the Cmhc study is on page 13. You can see the one beds showing at 1043. Two beds a little bit higher than that. We also provide the chart in the middle of the page. We do believe, given the age of the improvements, the size of the units, generally they are smaller, despite it giving you a size that shows a bit higher. That all actually takes into account all of the gross floor area in the building, which obviously has a lot of common areas, as shown in the photographs that are supplied for seniors activities. The actual units themselves are not overly large. It would be on the smaller side. So we do believe that the in-place rents are appropriate. We've added, of course, the parking revenue to our valuation. And we can move on to the expenses. This is an interesting bit here. We did defer in the end to the 3.2% vacancy allowance that the city has used overall. I will point out, however, that if you look at the stats from Cmhc for seniors housing, the average vacancy rates for seniors housing in Winnipeg is shown as 9.2% for one-bedroom units and 4.9% for 2 and 2-bedroom units. Now, this could be a function of turnover for various reasons. Obviously, people moving on to higher levels of care or not being around anymore, etc. But generally, we're looking at higher vacancy rates. We've deferred to the 3.2%, but please keep in mind that the vacancy can certainly be higher than that. Our expense analysis is shown on page 15. We had only 2 years that were available to us to review. So I've provided the 2018-2019 year and the 2020-2021 year. And done the stabilization as shown. We made adjustments where necessary. Property management was pretty much bang on the 5%. We did make an adjustment to repairs and maintenance. It is exceptionally low at the 2 years that we were looking at there, given the property that it is. Again, some of this may speak to the control that the tenants have over their individual units as life lease owners. So we made a projection for repair and maintenance based on 1,200 units. That is certainly well within the norms for market apartments. Generally, we're seeing up to 1,500, sometimes higher on the repair and maintenance. It can also be lower, of course, but 1,200 is a pretty standard projection for R&M. So that is how the stabilization was done. You can see our expense allowance comes to 536, 257. Our which is very similar in dollar amount to the one projected by the city. The capitalization rate, all of you have heard this before, so I won't belabor the point, but again, we're dealing with a different situation here from standard market apartment. So the goal in arriving at a fair market assessment is just that, to arrive at a fair market assessment. And in order to do that, you need to look at the property itself, as well as any legal and or ownership structure issues that would have an impact on the valuation. It can't be ignored. You can't treat the property simply straight up as a market apartment. You can make the appropriate valuation changes, obviously on income and expense, but when it comes right down to it, we're not looking at a standard market apartment, and any astute investor would look at the purchase of such a property and the risks involved, and ascribe a higher capitalization rate to take into account those risks. So page 16, let's have a very quick look. Just quickly quote here: social and affordable housing properties cannot legitimately be directly compared to standard market apartment transactions, as there's considerable restrictions and burdens that are not present for market apartments, many of which are mentioned in the next paragraph there. I'm not going to go through them one by one, including disposition restrictions. Expert in this particular field, accredited appraiser from the United States. And again, we're talking theory, not jurisdiction here, so it doesn't matter that he's in the US. Wrote a book titled Valuation and Market Studies for Affordable Housing. Developing a market-derived cap rate for an income-restricted property begins with an analysis of the available rates for similar unrestricted properties. Then these rates are adjusted based on the risk factors that an investor would consider in developing a cap rate. The result is a cap rate based on market factors and associated risks. In the final analysis, property tax assessment must take into account the public purpose of the project, overall benefits and burdens, and the restricted natures of the operating rents. So again, you have a non-standard ownership situation. It's owned by a nonprofit, which doesn't necessarily matter, but it is a life lease facility. So each tenant in here has jurisdiction over their unit for the period of their life, which is an indefinite period of time. So as an investor, are you going to buy that property at the same cap rate as a standard market apartment, all other things being equal? Or are you going to say, well, I can't increase the rents. I can't unilaterally go in and renovate units and increase my return. I have to deal with each of these people almost more on an ownership basis than as a standard tenant. There are significant restrictions here that would cause any owner, any potential purchaser, to ascribe a greater cap rate than those that we would find in the standard market. So our standard market cap rate study, running from 5.2 up to 5.8% roughly as the normal range. We have our industry participants, Colliers and C.B. Richard Ellis, all of which I've run through already. And I will point out an interesting feature on page number 19. You want to take a look at the C.B. Richard Ellis Q4 2020 cap rates. So we have multifamily cap rates in that 5.25% to 5% range, or 6% range. And then at the bottom of the page, we have seniors housing. And they're referring to three particular categories here, but they're looking at independent assisted living A, independent assisted living B, and long-term care A, which they don't have a cap rate for. Obviously, higher levels of care, different animals than standard market apartment, and the cap rates for each of those is significantly higher. Now, we're not an assisted living or independent living facility. I'm not saying that we are, but many of the same issues are present here. So we have taken into account all of this analysis. Please read through page 19 at your leisure to itemize each of the each of the factors. But again, any prudent, astute investor would assign a higher cap rate. So we have used cap rate of 6% in our analysis. Let's move on to page 21. Gives you a comparison between our valuation and the city's valuation in both 2023 and 2020. Our rental income at 100% occupancy is shown at the top. Again, they actually achieved 987,441. We're not using that number. We're using the fully occupied projected rent in our valuation. We've done the expense allowance stabilization, and we come out to an NOI of 467,691. Now, gone through this in detail because I feel that it is important to understand each of the aspects for this property. We've been very thorough in the analysis of each of these components. So while there may be some closeness in terms of the NOI, I don't feel they're interchangeable, and the 467,691 is very defendable based on the presentation I made before you today. So capping our NOI at 6% gives us a final market value of $7,795,000. The addenda includes the income and expense for the relevant years. I'm open for questions.
Thank you. Mr. McCullough?
Hi, I'm gonna do the questions on this one. So,
Mr. Barocas?
hi, have you inspected the property?
I have.
Looking at your photos, I'm trying to just find them here. It looks like would you agree that it's in period correct, but maintained condition?
I would, yes.
Okay. So then going to your expenses here, I noticed that you doubled the repair and maintenance, bringing it up to $1,200 a unit. Can you maybe just elaborate a bit more on that? Is that more of a range you'd think that a for-profit purchaser would run the property at?
Well, it's the 1,200, and I did speak to this briefly when we were going through it there, but the repair and maintenance budget for the property certainly seems to be reflecting a lower than normal repair and maintenance allowance. Now, this could be reflective of the fact that it is a nonprofit and they're looking to save money where possible. And it might also reflect the fact of the unit occupants having some say over what, or rather having decision-making power essentially over their units themselves, leading to that lower amount. So the $1,200 a unit, again, typically we see up to $1,500 per unit as a market norm. You've probably heard that many times from both myself and others. $1,200 a unit is very defendable and certainly well within the market norms.
Okay, I think I understand what you did there. Just and given that it seems like it's in maintained condition, if they would double the repair maintenance, would there not be somewhere an increase in physical quality with that extra repair and maintenance going on, like upgrades?
Well, so I see your point here, certainly. I would again point to the control of the occupants over their units as far as what occurs in them. So the repair and maintenance would likely be somewhat lower given given the occupants control over their units, so you won't, is it in period condition and maintained? Yes, it is overall, but again, you're going to have variability unit to unit, so the R&M budget is just abnormally low
Okay,
outside of the norms of the market.
yeah, it does look low. There's no debating that. So, this being a life lease, from what I understand, in these situations, applicants, they're able to buy down their actual rents with application fees. Is that true in this situation as well?
You can, generally you have to put in an amount of money at the beginning, and there is an element of that, but it varies wildly between occupant to occupant. Again, it's a non-profit life lease, so people aren't putting in generally significant amounts of money here in order to buy down their monthly cost. And again, there's no profit aspect with this particular property, in that at the end of the lease term, the unit simply goes back to the nonprofit entity, and the deposit is returned to the former occupant. And
Okay, yeah, that's how I thought I understood that as well. If we could go to page 27 really quickly, please, everyone. So I know what you mean by the money, the application getting returned to the applicant. I'm just looking on page 27, about 2/3 of the way down in the 2021 column. It says fund balance beginning of the year, 259,776. Now, I'm assuming that's not just sitting in a vault somewhere. I'm assuming they're putting it in a bank. Would they not be able to collect interest return on that for the time being before it's returned to the tenant?
yeah, certainly they could. They'd be unwise not to invest their money over the period of time that they're holding it. But again, they're not driving significant returns on that money, and there's always tenants that are coming and going, right? So the money needs to be made available. So we're not looking at high yielding instruments here. So if we look at our projected or our 100% projected occupancy revenue versus the city's, when we come down to effective gross income, they're very close. Whereas the actual in-place rental income was roughly $25,000 lower than the projected gross rent.
Okay, I just mean, like, because you're from just following along with your presentation, you're considering all of what you said to be the encumbrances on the leasehold interest, tenants being in there, etc. I'm just wondering, like, why you wouldn't, from an income standpoint, make an estimation in regards to a return on the money that's essentially just sitting in the bank waiting and able to be used or get a return on.
Well, so, and I think there's an easy answer to that one. If we look at a standard market apartment, and the owner of that property at the end of every year, they receive a certain amount of profit. What do they do with that money at that point? Should we be ascribing an interest to the money that they profit at the end of the year? It's a bit of a red herring. They're not generating a lot of revenue here that should be ascribed to income.
Okay, I mean, we're like 2.5% or so apart on net operating income, so I won't belabor point. Just in regards to other not-for-profits, when you're doing a valuation, do you look at their in-place rents, or do you go to like a CMHC report or comparables when coming up with a potential income?
Well, very much, it would depend on, if we felt that their in-place income and expense were fairly reflective of market rents and market expenses, et cetera. So it can vary. We certainly always look at market stats such as CMHC for comparison to see whether we feel they are in line with market, as well as market rent studies, et cetera.
Okay. And then just in regards to looking at the physical condition of the property, so you agree that we're very close on gross potential income. You'd agree that the rents in place and the model rents accurately represent the income and expense situation in hand in consideration to the physical characteristics of the property?
We feel that our projected or the valuation as we've run through it here is a fair reflection of the property as it sits as of the valuation date. Yes.
Okay. And then just in regards to it being like a below market rent standpoint, looking at comparables, are you at all concerned about there maybe being some double adjusting for the condition of the property and the capitalization rate?
No, I'm not at all really. When we look at our gross potential income, so, and I'll speak to this, I guess, the city's projection of $1,044,438 for gross potential income is inclusive of all points of revenue, including parking, laundry, storage, what have you, in that modeling. From what I understand, that's correct, I believe. So when we look at the subject property and we add in the parking revenue that's appropriate, we come up to gross potential of $1,037,415. So I certainly feel that's a fair reflection of the property, and on that end isn't that far off of what the city has projected for it. Not that I'm in agreement with the city's amount, but I feel that it more than adequately takes into account the what market rent would be for a facility such as this.
Okay, and then just one more question, just on page 19. Going to page 19 on the CBRE national cap rate report, Canadian cap rates. You mentioned seniors housing, independent and assisted living. Do you know if when coming up with their cap rates, they included business revenue as well in the net operating income? Like a lot of these places have kitchens, shuttles, whatnot.
Yeah, it certainly is a different animal, and I'm not suggesting that we should look at that seniors housing as where the subject should lie, just using it for comparative purposes, in that the subject is different than a standard market apartment. So there are elements of that seniors housing section that would apply to the subject, such as vastly increased amounts of common areas to maintain heat, etc., over a standard apartment.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
I thank you.
Yeah.
Ms. Nisbet.
No, thank you. I have no questions.
Mr. McIntyre.
And I have no questions, thank you.
I just have a couple. This property has a history of appeals.
It does, yes.
Have you? How many times have you represented this property?
I have been their representative since the 2010 assessment.
So you've been at the municipal board?
Well, we actually have a single property at the municipal board, and it was meant to go through case management this summer, but due to family circumstances, I wasn't able to attend at that time.
This is a life lease property,
Mhm.
and are the people owners or tenants?
They are life lease tenants in that they have a life lease tenancy interest in their unit itself. So they have a leasehold interest.
There hasn't been any life lease sales, has there? I don't think.
No, there are no sales that would occur from this
So,
property.
so how do you develop a cap rate for these properties?
Well, that is the interesting thing, and I didn't mention it in my questioning, but when we look at both the city's evidence and ours, we're not going to see any transactions of these facilities on the marketplace as a whole.
Yeah.
Their mandates are what they are to provide affordable seniors housing effectively, right? So that is their intent, and that is how they're run. So you're not going to see them transacting on the marketplace. So the exercise
So it's
then
pretty
becomes
hard,
theoretical.
pretty hard to develop a cap rate then.
It is indeed, but in order to do so, what we do, using our appraisal background, is look at what would go into the theoretical situation if such a property were to transact on the open market. How would it be approached by both the vendor and the purchaser?
All right, that's good enough.
Thank you.
Either party want summation?
No, we are good.
Hey, Mr. Smith?
No, thank you.
Okay, we'll go to 28th Arden Avenue. Mr. Metcalf, whenever you're ready.
Okay, so we have file number 222961 and roll number 08004015000. And the roll year is 2023, assessed value 1.693 million. The classification is 20 and it is taxable. So just a description here, it's one building, 2-story apartment, effective year and actual year built is the same, 1971. Consists 14 suites, 14 outdoor parking, and masonry bearing wall construction. I just wanted to highlight here location. So it is located west off of St. Mary's Road and in between Paulberry Street and St. Mary's on Arden Avenue. And the property, if we scroll to page 3, had a sale October 1st, 2018 for 1.5 million. And then we will get in here to the income summary. So our average monthly rent works out to $985.47. And then our income model workup here, you can have a look at and see our net operating income coming in at $83,784 with the capitalization rate of 4.95%. And next page here on page 5, I just wanted to supply some rent comparables here. So you could see that this property falls in line with similar properties in the area. And then moving on to cap rates, again, highlighting what we previously have with our range of cap rates and then our evidence to support that, and then where you could see where this property falls, 4.95%. So moving on, I've supplied here. So here's the 2020 income statement. So their net operating income came out to 86,830, and if you scroll down to page 12, so I just put an excerpt in where the property appears to have been renovated. This could be the result of lower NOI from the 2019 mailer and 33% vacancy. So you could see above here, there is the 2019 income statement I did provide. They did not list any capital expenditures. However, if you scroll, the upgrades look fairly recent as being completed after the sale of the property in 2018. So the subject NOI comes out to 86,830 from the 2020 mailer, and that's with using 1260 per unit repair and maintenance, where our model's coming in at 83,784. So if we want to just keep taking a look, you could see the upgrades that have been done in the property on page 13, 14, 15, 16. And then just for reference, I included the sales mailer that was returned to the department. So it was the sale was arm length and an open market transaction. They had indicated that they are going to do, it says, did you or do you intend to make major repairs or improvements to the property? They selected yes. And then just a description of the sale was all cash, 1.5 million. They had said that it wasn't based on the net operating income, the sale. So, I mean, yeah, you can take that for what you want, but the last page I just wanted to highlight, there was capital, like on the listing that was provided when the property was marketed, there was capital expenditures here that were already done a little bit as well, leading into the sale. So yeah, that's pretty much, we feel good on where we are from a net operating income standpoint and a cap rate standpoint. So that will conclude the presentation.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
Yes, just a few questions. So the property was renovated subsequent to the sale, and the 2020 year represents a full year of operation with the renovated property. So when I look at the income and expense, two things jump out at me. Gross potential suite income at 100% occupancy, 157,560. The actual collected was 154,925, whereas the projected rent for the property that the city has is 165,559. Again, would that not indicate that the model is off if we have renovated units that are on the market and rented?
I would say that even though that is higher, that our net operating income still comes in line with what's being reported.
So on that front, when we look at the income and expense questionnaire then for 2020, so again, we have missing aspects here. No admin expense basically for office supplies. We don't have any marketing, nothing in HVAC, no security no caretaking expense, again, major one, and no maintenance applies. So that NOI that is shown there would not include many typical expense categories for standard market apartment. Is that fair to say?
It could be. I mean, it's hard for me to say because I'm basing it on what's being reported to us.
Right. And I certainly respect that. But so when I look at it, if one were to not clean and maintain and caretake a property, would the condition not deteriorate and lead to less tenant interest, lower revenue, etc.?
I mean, a lot of the time, like at least in my experience, sometimes these maybe smaller operators don't fill out every individual line item and they roll them into one, like in the repair and maintenance. A lot of the time, like supplies, repair and maintenance often fall under the same category in the same way that office supplies falls in with supplies. So instead of taking the time to break them all out on their own individualized Excel sheet, they just total them and then toss them into the repair and maintenance category. Based on the pictures, I don't see any indication that the property isn't being maintained at all. It looks like they're getting almost potential income. So it looks like they're running it just fine based on what they're reporting.
So what we have under repair and maintenance, 17,653, again, that's $1,260 per unit, which again is a fairly standard amount for repair and maintenance. So would that not indicate that that does not include the caretaking expense typically?
No, I mean, maybe if the place hadn't been renovated, like if it was just like we didn't have any photographic evidence, and what's this 71? If it looked like period correct 71, then perhaps, you know, that contention I would give more consideration. But often when you see buildings being renovated, they've got a few years where the expenses can be on a per unit basis below $1,000. That's not at all out of the ordinary. So I think it's very likely that the other supply and office related expenses are included in the R&M. That's just my opinion.
Well, I think we'll have to agree to disagree on that particular point. Certainly renovated units undergo wear and tear as well. This particular owner has several other properties, one of which is very new and has very high expenses due to tenant wear and tear on the units itself. Those are all of my questions. Thank you.
I thank you, Ms. Nesbitt.
No, I have no questions. Thank you.
I thank you, Mr. McIntyre.
I have no questions. Thank you.
I don't think I do either. So, Mr. Smith, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. So 28 Arden, pardon me, 2.5-story walk-up, as you can see from the photo on the front of the property. As shown, it is renovated post-purchase in 2018, with renovations occurring through 2019. Gives you somewhat skewed 2019 income level. Page number 3 gives us background on the property, built in 1971, 14 total units, 4 one-beds, 6 one-bed and den, and 4 2-bedroom units. So the 1-bed and den are really not 2-bedroom units. It is a relatively quite a small additional room, we'll call it. The photos begin on page number 4, exteriors, common area, and then we get into the units on page 5 and 6. You can see the renovations pretty standard renovations. They're not going for high level renos here. It's flooring that will last, as well as counters, bathroom fixtures, etc. is what they're looking for. So we're not looking at anything luxury at this location. Site description, you can see the site on page 7 highlighted, parking at the rear. I will point out, and I didn't in my questioning, but the city has a cap rate comparable at 32 Arden here, showing at 5.05% in their analysis, whereas the city has capped the subject property at 4.95%. Now, we look at page number 7. 32 Arden is the property immediately to the east, so to the right in the picture of the subject property, which has the red dot on it. So you can see the building itself, and then it's actually an L-shaped property. So they have a very large amount of additional land that is located at the back there to the right-hand side, behind the houses that front on Arden. So there's an additional land component there that could potentially be developed at some point as well. Moving on, property location, yes, been well described. It's in St. Patel on Arden, off of St. Mary's, in that particular area. Let's move on to the valuation itself. So the subject property has an overall average rent of $938 per unit per month. We have the CMHC structure shown below the actual structure. So we have $995 one beds, $950 one bed and den, which are smaller, and then we have 2 beds at $1,100. Compare that to the CMHC. Certainly falls in line. We also have additional comparables on page 11 from the immediate area in St. Patel. Happy to go through those if you wish. They more than support the in-place rents. Again, property's been fully renovated and taken to market. Any astute investor, of course, is not going to undercharge for their units. So they're achieving the maximum that they can at that property. And again, brand new renovation, so there is no additional rent that can be achieved at that property. So to project higher is I would say inaccurate. CMHC average rental market report, bottom of page 11, again supports our in-place rent. So we're using the in-place gross rent, 100% occupied at $157,560. There is no parking revenue or laundry income for the property. Page 13, we use the 3.2%, which is supported by CMHC. And the expense allowance, if we move to page 14, we're really only looking at a single year, unfortunately. The property was just renovated. So we're looking at the I&E from 2020. If you look at the expenses, they reported $68,095 for 2020, exclusive of any caretaking expense. Now, caretaking is not rolled into the R&M here, and any apartment block is going to have a caretaking expense for that property. And it's not the case where there's a caretaker on site and it's rolled into their rent or anything. In this instance, that's not the circumstance. So again, looking at the size of the property, we've added a caretaking amount of $4,000 to that budget. I would also point out, again, if you look at the I&E, there's a number of expense categories that are missing. So that expense budget of $72,095 is probably on the conservative side. We're not looking at any any expenses for those standard categories such as advertising, caretaking supplies, et cetera, et cetera. We can look at that if you wish. So let's move on to cap rates. We've covered all of this in detail. I won't go through the ranges again. What do we have here? We have a newly renovated property located in St. Patel, not a bad location. It's achieving the maximum rents that they're able to achieve in the marketplace for that point in time. So again, there's no upside here. You can't buy it and renovate it and increase your return. However, it's in good condition, obviously, having been renovated in 2019, well located. I don't deny that. Our study indicates caps in that range of 5.2 to 5.7%. So we would position the subject property at the low end of that range, and we've assigned a cap rate of 5.25% in our analysis. Again, this is backed up by CB Richard Ellis. If you look at their cap rates in Q4 2020 on page 18, they have low rise A starting at 5.25 and low rise B starting at 5.5. So we've assigned a cap rate of 5.25% based on this analysis. Page number 20 summarizes our valuation. Again, rental income considerably lower than the projected rent by the city. The expenses, again, are probably underestimated at 72,000, could be somewhat higher than that. We simply don't have the data to support it. But so our NOI is certainly on the conservative side. We cap that at 5.25%. This gives us 1,532,000. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you. Mr. McCulloch, questions of Mr. Smith?
We're just asking the questions for cap rate previously be applied to this property, and in the end, we're going to do a little closing summary at the end.
Thank you. Ms. Nesbitt?
Yeah, I'm sorry, but for the record, could you explain what you mean by the previously asked questions about cap rate?
Just at the beginning of the presentation, with the first property, we had asked the applicant about cap rate questions pertaining to his data that he had submitted, and with regarding to the addresses, what type of property they were, if they were sold in conjunction together when doing, like, selecting those cap rates, and then using, did he do a 3-year income stabilization on those?
Okay, thank you for clarifying. Mr. Smith, I have a question about your rents on page 10.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I'm just, I think it's page 10. Yeah, page 10. So maybe I'm just confused as to the presentation, or you've noted that the current rental structure in the subject property, $995, $950, and $1,100, depending on the unit type. And yet you've used an overall average rental rate of $938. Why is the average rental rate lower than the actual rents in place?
Well, that is a good question. Maybe there's a calculation error there. Let's have a quick look at it. Bear with me for just a moment while I do that. So,
Calculator?
I do, yeah, okay. So again, 100% occupancy, 157,560. And we have a total of 14 units. So yes, I will, yeah, I did not run through, reviewing his calculation of the number here, of 157,560. So, and unfortunately, in this version that you see here was as clear as the one that I had. So I may be marginally off on what those standard rents were, which would of course change the rent, but 157,560 is what is stated as the gross potential rent, and that I believe is backed up by the 154,925. So when I divide the 157,560 by the number of units times the 12 months, we do come out to 938. So I apologize for the clarity of that image on A2, but that was as clear as it was for me as well. So it may be that my stated rents are marginally off of what it actually is.
Okay, that's not a problem. It struck me as just a little bit out of whack, just based on the numbers.
Absolutely.
Showing me, right?
Good
Okay,
catch. Thank you.
that was my only question. Thank you.
It would be unusual for a one bedroom to go for more than a one bedroom and den. So that could perhaps be where the gap is.
So, Mr. Smith, are you going to alter your figure or just live with it?
Well, I'm happy to live with it. Again, I'm not saying, believe me, I'm not saying that it's low. What I'm saying is I can't necessarily make out exactly what each of those figures are. So it may be that the one beds are 915. In any case, I did not go through the calculation for each of those types, but the 157,560 is certainly accurate. This particular owner is an engineer by trade and very intense about his numbers. So I believe that this figure would be accurate.
Okay, no, that's great. Thank you.
Is that it, Lynn? Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, thank you.
Brent?
I have no questions. Thank you.
I just have a couple of questions. This is a client of yours, Mr. Smith?
It is.
Okay. And how long has he been a client of yours? Just this year?
No, 3 cycles now, I believe. This is the third.
Do you have any sort of idea, like based on the pictures, do you have any idea in regards to how much he spent in regards to renovating?
Unfortunately, no, I didn't get a breakdown on this capital investment.
Because that was in 2019, I think you said.
It was in 2019, yes.
So that would be reflective in regards to any of the financial statements.
Not in 2020, 2019, yes,
Yeah.
Because it's only showing 110 in income.
Okay. All right. That's all I have there. Either party one summation?
Yes, I would just like to just say one thing. Our cap rate evidence that we supplied has a sale at 32 Arden, which is next door, that is built in 1969 and with an effective age on it of 1984. And we worked out a cap rate of 5.05%. Whereas this property is 4.95%. So we're within 0.1% on the cap rate there, just to show how our model does show actual market transactions that have taken place.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Final word.
Yes, again, in summary, subject property is built in 71 and has, according to the city, an effective year of built of 1971. We have an adjacent sale at 5.05, not 4.95, and we have additional land for potential future development at that particular location. So I would suggest that all of those aspects point to a higher cap rate for the subject property.
All right, thank you. We'll go on to the last one on the docket, which is 1919 St. Anne's Road. Mr. Michalak, whenever you're ready.
Okay, so this is file 22-2183, roll number 08005683300. The roll year is 2023. Assessed value 12,189,000. Classification is 20 and liability is T taxable. So we have one building with 5 stories, and the actual year built and effective year built are the same, 1999. Number of suites 64, 64 indoor parking, 20 outdoor parking, with a masonry bearing wall construction. I've highlighted the location here on page 2 that shows it's located east side of St. Anne's Road, just south of Shore Hill Drive, in behind park area and adjacent to shopping mall. And just rolling forward here to our income workup. So our average monthly rents come out to $1404.20, and our model workup for the summary gives a net operating income of $591,170 with a capitalization rate of 4.85%. Now, I had provided here some rent comparables, just again to highlight the property falls in range with other similar properties in the area. And page 6 and 7, again, touching on the cap rate evidence by the city with the ranges stated previously, and then the sales to support where our cap rate falls. And so if we get to page 9 and then onward, page 10, I've provided their statement for 2020. And you could see, just scrolling through, I had to do some adjustments just to remove some items that were not included, that shouldn't be included when calculating the expenses. On page 12 you could see. And so you know, we feel where our model's coming in at 591,170 would be reasonable to reflect that, you know, it is a nonprofit, but if we're looking at fair market value, I think we're pretty good. So we can open it up to questions. You have.
Thank you. Mr. Smith.
Yeah, just quickly. So again, this is valuation is model driven based on standard market apartment.
Yeah.
And that wouldn't take into account any legal or ownership structure. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Looking at page number 9. So at the bottom here, you've got actually just to start with. So and I think you'd already stated this for the 1295 Dakota. This would be the wrong year that is included and analyzed. Is that correct? March 31st, 2000?
Right, again, just putting it together, not having used the 2021, just not seeing that their year-end reported was March 31st instead of the usual law of them December, I guess, of 20, so we can't use the 2021s.
Okay. But it would have been received in time to, and I'm not.
No, for sure, yeah.
By any means, but it
Yeah.
would have been available to the city for
Yes.
inclusion. Okay, thank you.
Yes,
And
it wasn't intentional.
Yeah, no worries. Looking at page number 9, you've got at the bottom of this questionnaire here, average actual 1633, model 1404. So that's based on that 100% occupancy. Is that correct?
Yes.
Before, whereas the actual rent received was 1,076,443 in that year, right? So that would be quite a bit different than the 1254.
Right.
Okay. And then on page 12, I don't want to go through this in detail.
Yeah.
For a long time. 2019 NOI. So you've removed some things, but not. I guess just wanting to understand how the NOI that you projected is done here for these 2019 and 2020, because you're suggesting it's considerably higher than the model value.
Yeah, just if you were to remove, they have like amortization of capital assets, the mortgage interest. So you have to, and the allocation to replacement reserve.
Right.
So those were taken out of those line items when calculating the overall expenses.
Okay, and the revenue line that's used?
Well, the revenue line would be the very top, I guess, 1 point.
Sorry, I didn't have a chance to run through to see.
Yeah,
what
that's fine. 1.207771, what was reported for 2020.
So it's including the interest from security fund, interest and other interest earned on investment loan proceeds, etc.
Okay, and so I'll make a correction going into this property, being new to this type of situation. I would have just included the 1.207, not having known that, hey, you know what, for these type of specific properties, we don't use that. So you could, I guess, do a recalc of using the 1,101,777 if you wanted to recalculate, I guess.
No, that's fine. I'm not coming down on you here or anything. It's just that the figures on page 12 would not be accurate. I think it's fair to say.
Then it wouldn't make, yes, correct. Then it wouldn't make those ones accurate.
Okay, those I believe are all of my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Nesbitt?
Yeah, I note that you've used a 4.85 cap rate on this property. Could you please provide a little bit more information on how you arrived at that 4.85 cap?
It's just 100% model driven.
100% model?
Yeah.
It's the lowest cap rate of the day. Oh, right. No, not quite the lowest, but darn close to the lowest. So I'm just wondering, it's a larger property, 64 suites, 1999, effective year. Was there renovations? Can you just Okay,
Yeah, I understand where you're going with this. You can see the notes here. So it is a newer property in St. Anne's, which is a good area in the city. But I do agree with some of your comments in regards to the size of the property having an effect on where the capitalization rate would be. Often the smaller properties there's a bigger pool of investors because the littler guys can get in there and make a move on them. This one that wouldn't fall into that bucket. So the best I can tell you, other than that, it's modeled, is that the property is newer and it's in a good area.
okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McIntyre,
I have no questions. Thank
I
you.
have none. So Mr. Smith, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. So property we're dealing with, 919 St. Anne's, it's known as Victor Wyatt House, Inc. It is we're dealing with a nonprofit seniors life lease property. So it's the exact same situation as 1295 Dakota. If we look at our page number 3, bit more background on the property. 2023 assessment, 12,189,000. You can see the history of the assessment of the property going back on over a number of assessments there for you, which I've included for you. Fairly significant jump from 2020 to 2023. We're not seeing a huge shift in the market as far as caps over that time frame, so a bit of an anomaly there. And again, the situation is the same. I'm not going to run through it twice. All of the same comments with regard to property being a nonprofit life lease seniors facility hold true for this particular property as well. Let's move into the description of the property itself. We have 64 units, 48 two-bedrooms and 16 two-bedrooms and den. Property was built in 99 and is period original to that time frame. Again, it's nonprofit, so it is developed and operated with the intent of providing housing to seniors on a cost-effective basis. So this particular property is a little bit higher end. It has underground parking. The photographs are on page 5, and it's built in 99. So you can see the interior of the units beginning on page 7. Common areas on page 6, including communal areas on the main floor, and some of the other floors have areas like that as well. The units have not been renovated. They're all from that same kind of vintage and maintained in the shape you can see. We have a photo from the underground there for you as well. Let's move into the site and location. Obviously, it's in St. Patel, not a bad location. Fronting on St. Anne's, just north of, between Bishop Grandin and the Perimeter Highway on St. Anne's. I didn't include necessarily all of the text that I did in 1295 Dakota with regard to the life lease. Please excuse my inattention in including that. All of that text holds true as far as my comments regarding life lease ownership and the legal structure of this particular property and the issues that presents with regard to valuation. Vacancy rate is shown for seniors rental market on On page number 12 there at the bottom, which is probably duplicated later on, so we won't look at that. Let's move on to the actual valuation itself. So giving you a 3-year history of the rental charges actually achieved in the property, very slight increases year to year as a standard with a normal market situation. March 31, 2021, we have rental charge of $1,127,159. This is based on the standard rental rate range of $1,478 to $1,571 for 2 beds, and then higher for the 2 beds and down, as you can see. Overall average comes to based on what they actually bring in, comes to $1,468 per month. The Cmhc stats are at the bottom of the page. Obviously, these rents are at the higher end of the range, being 1,400 and up. The Cmhc stats are shown again on page number 14, and they are somewhat higher than the norm for the St. Patel area and the market as a whole. Again, subject property, well constructed, relatively new in 1999. It does have amenities such as underground parking, which would tend to drive higher rental rates. So we have not reduced the in-place revenue, and we've gone with the actual gross rental income of $1,127,159. We move on to the expense side. We've deferred to the 3.2% in our analysis. However, if you can look at the seniors housing vacancy, it tends to be considerably higher than that for the reasons already stated. Let's move on to the expense stabilization on page number 16. So in this case, we of course do have a 3-year history. Broken it out for you here. And we have made adjustments where appropriate. So the repair and maintenance in this case was relatively high, ranging between 132,000 and 167,000, which is over 2,000 units. Now, we've reduced that to 1,800 a unit for the subject property. Reason for this, again, there is some variability in R&M in the marketplace. I see 1,000 to 1,500 plus as a norm in most circumstances. The subject property does have underground parking as well, which will lead to increased expenses in maintaining that. We have an elevator, which also drives higher expenses, and we have significant common areas, which also need to be maintained. So you end up with higher R&M. However, we felt it was on the high side, so we reduced that. Also reduced slightly the property management, although it wasn't very excessive. And the rest you can see how the stabilization was done. So our final expense amount is $503,593, which is 46% of effective gross income. Our cap rate information remains the same. In the interest of time, similar to what the city has done, I'll just ask you to recall my comments from the discussion on 1295 Dakota with regard to capitalization rate selection for a property such as this, which is a nonprofit seniors life lease facilities and all of the complications that would be involved with that. You're an astute investor looking at a purchase of a property on the open market, and you have an identical property to this, but this one is a seniors nonprofit life lease. There's numerous issues that come into play that would lead you to ascribe a higher cap rate to that. For the reasons already discussed. Happy to go through them again if you wish. But we felt that I think that's already been covered in great detail. So similar to 1295 Dakota, property is well located in St. Catel, maintained well, etc. It does have underground parking. So we have reduced the cap rate slightly to 5.75% in our analysis for 919 St. Anne's from the 6% assigned to 1295 Dakota. And this is summarized on page number 22. So you can see our analysis side by side with the city's analysis from 2023 and 2020. So our rent is somewhat higher than that projected by the city. We've not reduced that. We've not applied a higher vacancy rate, which we could for seniors, but we felt this was appropriate. The stabilized expenses come out to 503, very defendable, and this gives us our final NOI of 587,497. So ultimately, it ends up being very similar in NOI to the city's projection. However, the cap rate considerably different. We have city using a 4.85% cap rate here. Pardon me, versus a cap rate of 5.05% on 1295 Dakota. Very similar properties. That built in 89, this one in 99. This one has underground parking as an amenity, which we've accounted for in our cap rate adjustment. I don't see that this would be treated as such on the open market. At that cap rate level, there's simply too many issues that would lead any investor to applying a higher capitalization rate. So our final market value comes to $10,217,000 based on our analysis. And the addenda includes the INEs for your review. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. McCulloch, questions of the applicant?
No questions.
Yes. Thank you. Ms. Nesbitt?
Thank you. I have no questions.
Thank you. Mr. McIntyre?
Just to sort of confirm, it seems to be the cap rate is your issue. Your NOIs are very close.
Ultimately, it comes down to cap rate. Yes.
Okay, that was my only comment.
Summation, either party?
No, we are good. Thank you.
All right, then we have heard all the scheduled items this morning, and the hearing is now adjourned. So thank you kindly, Mr. Smith. Have a pleasant day. Results very soon. Mr. McCulloch, Mr. Rosak, thank you kindly for your presentations. Have a good day.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.